How do you sort out the so-called jargon from real-world practices that work? Do the members of your organization find some business or technology advice utterly confusing? Welcome to Real Talk with Sam Holcman. In this program, we set the record straight, and in terms that business people and technology people can understand. Now, here is your host, Sam Holcman.
Welcome to this edition of Real Talk. My name is Sam Holcman, and the topic for this particular broadcast is kind of strange. And when I say kind of strange, I was observing with a client last week, as a matter of fact, the concepts of minimal this and minimal that, minimal viable product, minimal viable architectures, minimally acceptable, minimal this, all the minimal stuff. And I posed to this particular client, I said, what is strange to me is, I say, I understand what people are trying to do. For whatever reason, they believe whatever they're trying to achieve is taking too long, so they're trying to figure out an iterative approach to solve their needs. Yet, I see in this organization, and possibly yours and others, these massive, gigunga implementations that are all encompassing and with tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of costs. There seems to be a dilemma there, at least in my mind, between those two extremes. And I was taken back to a project that we did decades ago in the concepts of minimal overhead, not minimal functionality. And that concept is what we refer to as a federated approach versus an all-encompassing mega approach from an organizational, corporate, or mission standpoint. Let me translate a little bit. In other words, instead of trying to have the massive whatever it is throughout the organization, the layer that is the largest scope, not in detail or not in functionality, but in scope across the mission or the government agencies or the departments or the divisions, is a thin layer, and everything stays local, which is just the opposite of these mega projects. And the phrase that I think we coined it, was federated architecture. You only federate what is required to be the same in two or more different activities, departments, divisions, or programs. So you start off with the concept that says, if it is local to a specific organization, unit, or piece of understanding, it stays there. But if two or more entities or two or more projects or programs or divisions or whatever criteria you want to use requires that, then it needs to be, quote, federated. So it's just the opposite of starting with a mega jagunga, whatever it is, and then going down. Now think about this, as I always like to, from a simple standpoint of, let's say, your house. So in a bedroom, do you need to have a sink in your bedroom? I didn't say in the dressing area or in the bathroom, but in the bedroom. I don't mean prepare for it, but I'm talking about full functionality. The answer is no. Now, that means that I don't have to have that in every room of the house, as an example. I don't have to prepare for that. I don't have to install it and implement it. It's not just the preparation, but it's the actual full deployment. And that's what we have with these mega, gigantic, all-encompassing software programs. Now people say, well, you don't have to use that module. It doesn't matter. The complexity is still there in the software and in your maintenance requirements and your change requirements that are there. Because the philosophy is we have everything and you just down select what you need. That's where the software bloat and technical debt comes from. You have this massive thing, and you're only using a piece of it, a piece of that particular functionality, which is just the opposite, again, of what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is thinking through what an organization needs, and then there is I'll use the phrase, a governing organization that looks across these, and if they see the same thing, whether it's a piece of data or a process or activity, then it is federated upwards. I can say right now the success that we had in the past is now again coming back to play here because of the massive complexity that we are seeing. And of course, you can see that by the number of hacks and cybersecurity attacks that are out there, because no one has a baseline for addressing and managing change. So the concepts of federated, whether it's the application or the architecture, and here we're talking about architecture first, of course, would be think about local first, and if two localities or locales need this, then it becomes federated, versus just the opposite. We're saying by definition everything needs to be common, and then you can down select from there. Think about that from an architecture standpoint, from a complexity standpoint, and of course from a agility standpoint. Until next time, stay well and stay healthy, and think 1 divided by complex. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Talk. Be sure to join your host, Sam Holcman, again for another edition of our program. We'll have more real topics of discussion then. Thank you for tuning in.